Welcome to the Alchemy for Authors podcast. I'm your host, Jo Buer. If you're an author, aspiring author, writer, or wordsmith, you're in the right place. Join me as I chat with authors and industry professionals and share my own experiences with using manifestation and mindset practices to supercharge our writing lives. We'll explore ways to overcome writer's block and imposter syndrome. We'll find motivation and inspiration to get our butts in the chair and our stories written. And most importantly, we'll embark on creating lives and livings doing what we love. If you've ever dreamed of a prolific, wealthy, happy or healthy author career or writing practice, then this show is for you. So let's dive into Alchemy for Authors. Hello, my lovelies. Welcome back to another episode of Alchemy for Authors. So today's episode, I am chatting with Rick Nuske. Rick is the host of the podcast, The My Future Business Show, and author of the book, Welcome to the Show 1.0, The Complete Podcasting System for Your Business. Rick believes that the rate of failure in small to medium-sized businesses is both unacceptably high and largely avoidable. His specialty is in helping business owners and entrepreneurs through sharing his valuable insights into podcasting and podcast marketing systems. So in this episode, we will be talking about how Rick overcame his fear towards writing his first book, why Rick praises the Fletcher method as helping him structure his book, why Rick's environment can be the trigger for negative self-talk and how he moves through that, why it's so important to keep the quality of your books and contents as professional as possible, Rick's marketing tips for building an audience and readership, and the benefits of having a podcast when you write nonfiction. Now, this is a really cool episode. I am a huge advocate, obviously, for having a podcast. Alchemy for Authors began early 2022, and it has been life-changing. It has been one of the best things. It was terrifying at the time and really, truly pushed me outside of my comfort zone. But the experiences I've had and the amazing people that I've had on this show, the authors that I've chatted with, the listeners that I've connected with through social media and that has just given me the most amazing experiences of my life that has opened the doors to so many opportunities outside of this podcast that I just never could have imagined before starting this show. And so if you are a person that has considered in the past starting a podcast, or if you're an author of nonfiction and you're just wondering how a podcast might complement your books, then I think you're going to get quite a bit out of this episode. And I do highly recommend that you go seek out Rick Nuske after this episode. And of course, all the links will be in the show notes to help you get on that path of creating for yourself a podcast, trying something new. I'm biased, of course, because I love what I do. Alchemy for Authors is a real passion project for me. And I'm just so grateful to be doing this. So, of course, I'm going to be encouraging you that if it's something that appeals to you, go give it a go. You will not regret it. So, with that, I encourage you to grab a drink, find a comfy chair, sit back, and enjoy the show. Hello, Rick. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. What a wonderful opportunity.
Well, I'm really excited to hear all about your book, Welcome to the Show 1.0, The Complete Podcasting System for Your Business. So I was hoping if we could start with you sharing just a little bit about who you are and what led you to writing your book.
Yes, thank you again. Look, my name's Rick Nuske. I've got a couple of roles going on. I'm the founder of a company called My Future Business. I'm also the host of the My Future Business Show, which is a business building podcast for business owners to get more exposure, get in front of their best audience and stay there. And, you know, I am now a published author, which is something I never thought I would be able to do, Jo. But after a lot of time, a lot of pain, a lot of effort, I finally stuck it out and got to the promised land of published authors and created Welcome to the Show 1.0, the complete podcasting system for your business. And it's a reflection of everything that I've done over the last decade as a podcaster. And I've transferred it into, I guess, written form, audio form, and now also a video course. So there's a few arms to it.
That's awesome. That's cool. I love that you've got a video course for it as well.
Mm.
So if writing a book was something that wasn't actually on your radar, how did it come to be that you sat down and went through the process of writing a book?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's lots of people that I work with that I've given advice out to, and I found myself oftentimes talking about the same things over and over again. And then not once, but a handful of times I was prompted, "Hey, look, do you have a book?" And I didn't have a book, Joe. I had there was no inspiration at that time for me to write one, but there was a need, an evolving need. So I decided to put pen to paper, in my case, typing. And, here we are. Some years later, I finished.
So that's amazing because a lot of people I know that are on the show, they've usually had early aspirations to write a book. But I can imagine as a compliment for your business, it makes sense. But not everybody's excited to write a book. So what was that process of actually sitting down and putting your thoughts to, on
Yeah.
the keyboard, I guess? What was that like for you?
Oh, look, it was terrifying. And I'll just go back one step. There was a bit of, I guess you could call it inspiration from the likes of Dan Kennedy. I'm right into business books. And one thing I do recall was being impressed by, I guess, the skill and the talent that would be needed to actually write a business book, a non-fiction book. So I had no idea, Joe, where I was and how to structure a book. I've read plenty of them, but it's a very different world when you decide that I'm going to try and write a book. For me, it was a scary process, but I suddenly found myself creating a pattern of activity. I would write in the morning because I'm a morning person. And sometimes I would not know what to write, even though I had all of this content. Getting it out of the jumbled mess that it was inside of my head was, I think, the biggest trick for me. But yeah, again, we got there. So a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. So I write fiction, which is a little bit different, and I make life so much more difficult for myself by not plotting. But really with nonfiction, you do need to be quite organized and quite structured in how you deliver your content. So did you have a plan in place how you were going to structure it? Did you do an outline first, or what did that
Well,
look
it,
like?
it's very interesting that you asked that because I didn't at the early stages, and I was just flying by the seat of my pants. I had a Google Doc open, and I was just spewing words onto the page. But I'm very studious, and I'll research and I'll try and find out how people are writing books, and then I end up finding a company called Scribe, and then I found some other writers group, and I become a part of the Facebook writers group. And then I stumbled across Aaron Fletcher, the Fletcher method. And he talked about using a 3-part series, a 3-part process. And within the 3 parts, you have 3 sections. And within the 3 sections, you have 3 actions. And I followed his program and I purchased it and I learned about how he structures these things such that you pull out the hot ticket items from your process in a way that makes almost sequential sense. Retrospectively, once you've gone through the book, you don't need to use it in sequence again. You can always go back to it. But
Mhm.
Aaron Fletcher, the Fletcher method is the foundational sort of structure behind the book. So that helped me a great deal.
I hadn't heard of that, the Fletcher
Mm,
method. So that's
yeah.
really interesting.
Mm.
And so was this quite a long process for you? It sounds like you've been hinting that it took a little while to put your book together. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, look, there's life gets in the way, and there
Mm.
was always delays, and then I put it to the side, and I had self doubt, and my negative self talk got in the way more often than I wished it to. But I found myself always talking to my wonderful wife Jemima about it, and she said, "Look, you really need to just get in front of that computer and stop complaining to me that you're not doing it." So that's what I did. Mumbling and mumbling, I went upstairs and just kept typing and kept typing, and then lo and behold, one day there it was. I couldn't believe it.
So other than your wife,
Yeah, yes.
How did you move through that self-talk, that negative self-talk? Because I know that is something that hits all authors regardless of how long we've been doing this for.
Yeah, I found myself going into Facebook, an author's Facebook group. I would look online, I would do my research to type in things like how to keep going writing your book.
Mm.
Just, these phrases these questions I would ask. And I don't know. I honestly don't know how I did it. I think there must be some sort of a, a deep master plan inside me that knew that ultimately I was going to do this no matter what sort of pain that I was going to go through. So I guess I just chipped away at the stone and I knew there was gold there somewhere. And I just thought if I could be just one strike of the hammer away from hitting gold. So just keep at it, keep at it, keep at it.
That's cool. That's great. And it's nice to be able to find that support, even if it's like through a Facebook group or something like that. I think that's important.
Oh, yeah.
So for the process of like drafting and writing your book, how long did that take you?
I would say nearly 2.5 years in the
Mm.
drafting sort of phase and going back to it, leaving it for a handful of weeks, going back to it, leaving it for another month. And so I could have certainly done it a lot quicker. I know this time around, I'm doing it in a much more compressed timeline because I know my triggers and I know what worries me. I know what I think about and I know how to not be my own worst enemy, if you like.
I love that. Can you share some of those things that hold you back, like some of that negative self-talk? What are some of the things that are your triggers?
Yeah, interestingly, my environment, the office in which I work in, actually sets me off. And opening a Google Doc, I find myself, I wouldn't say sweating or anything like that. It's nothing too outrageous, but I just know that I'm about to attempt to do. And then that little chatter starts happening. So I think very much the environment has an impact on me. So what I do to get past that, I actually open the windows up, let the sunlight in, and I make sure there's a nice breeze coming through and I make myself feel as comfortable as possible. And if I find that I'm stalling, Joe, I'll just get up, go get myself a cuppa, go and pat the dogs, come back inside and try again.
That's cool. I like that. I like that you're perceptive of what your triggers are and how you can move through them and
Mhm.
not letting that stop you from going ahead.
Yep.
Yeah, because 2.5 years, that's not the longest that I've heard of somebody
Oh, no?
working on a book at all on this show. So
Feels like a long time.
yeah, but it will. And it's a long time to keep a project like that in your mind.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah,
I was
so
done with
well
it.
done you.
Yeah, I was certainly by the end of it, I was over it. That's for sure. I'm just was
Yeah.
glad that it was done, that crossing that finish line.
Yeah, but there's a whole different thing once you cross the finish line of doing your draft. And then if you go back and do edits, then you're looking at publishing it. So where did you go from there? What did you do?
Well, yeah, well, I didn't know much about the publishing world. I'd heard about Scribe and I went to them and I checked out what they were offering. And then I found another business and I ended up going through the publishing process through them. And they made it very, very easy to publish the book. And they held my hand, as it were, to go through that process. And, it is a skill to publish because I think nowadays, before online sort of environments came around, that needing to find a publisher was the only way you were going to get published. And that's since changed. And there's a whole world of opportunity opened up for self-published authors. And I think that's great because that didn't exist before. But, the thing I will say, Joe, is there's a lot more um, content out there, book content. And I'm not sure that I would put out some of the books that I've read because of that. See, because it's the
Mm,
barrier to entry is so much lower. Therefore, the quality of content seems to have dropped a little. And I'm
yeah.
cognizant of that. And I'm very aware to make sure that my content is the best it can be.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really important. I'm a indeed published author as well. So
Mm.
I know it's really important to me. It's really important to other people in my circle to keep that quality of content really high. What I've been finding really surprising, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but from my experience, now I'm finding some traditionally published books, I feel, have been dropping the quality, whether it's because they're bigger names, they've already got the following,
Mm.
but I'm actually also seeing a little bit of the reverse. I think there's a fear like a lot of a fear with the indie author community that we don't want to be seen as putting out rubbish.
Hmm.
And so I don't know, I think there's definitely a lot of us out there that are really trying to keep that high quality.
Yep.
And yeah, I do think it rivals sometimes what's coming out through traditionally published avenues as well.
Yeah, I think you can control how you think about that, and you can do your darndest, do your best to know what you have an expectation of yourself. And if you were willing to read it and be happy with it, I think that's where you should start.
Yeah, for sure. So this company that you went through that helped you with the publishing side of things,
Mhm.
did they take control of like your editing and that, or what services did they provide for you?
No, well, in terms of the editing, they looked at the final draft for approval, but I had friends, families, colleagues all look over the book, grammar, punctuation, flow, tone, all of those, inflection, all of the things that I think are relevant for a good book, because I write like I speak. And I think in some respects, that's what makes it me inside the book,
Mhm.
even though it's nonfiction. But there are some parts where I just rambled on. So they would help and say, look, restructure this, take this away. You could say this in as many words. You don't need a page to say what you've said. You need a paragraph. So there was that side of the involvement. And that took, I don't know, I'd like to say 3 weeks to get it totally done because, you'd spend an hour here and an hour there doing it.
Mhm. Yeah. And did they help with marketing at all, or was that on your shoulders?
No, they did at a cost. There's
Yeah.
obviously a cost to
Yeah.
these types of things. So
Uh,
I'm a marketer through and through. That's my
mm,
background. So I used their marketing system rather than their marketing skills because I knew they had an existing distribution network that I could leverage. And I thought, well, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. They've already got the audience. They've already got the platforms throughout the globe to distribute this book. So I used them in that respect, which was good. But I've also done some additional sort of marketing of myself.
So what are your marketing tips then, or what have you put into place to help get your book out there?
I think once you have a book out in the world, if you can get reviews for it, do so. I think your ability to capture somebody's information that allows you to continue a conversation with them is important. That could be in multiple different formats. If you have the ability to continue a conversation by giving away the book, I found that's one really powerful thing that I do within my Facebook group, which is useful because it's a fireside chat sort of conversation starter. They take away a copy of the book and they say, well, I've read this and I would never have thought to do this. And why did you do
Mm.
that? And then the conversation flows from there. So yeah, there's some organic, there's some paid. I've found that the paid brings in a different caliber of audience, and it's not necessarily the best audience, even though you can
Oh.
target them. Yeah, so there's, I think it's all about testing. It's not an overnight thing. I'm still continually testing it, but rest assured, Joe, I've learned a lot from this cycle of marketing for my next book. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So what would be your key thing then that you would recommend to somebody who was looking at marketing their self-published book? Is there something that you think kind of stands out more than others?
Yeah, well, for me, I've certainly noticed that free is alive and well.
Mhm.
If you're not in it to make money, which is not the reason to write a book, I think if you create a good book, fiction, nonfiction, doesn't matter what it is, and you give it away, that's very much the most effective because there's no barrier to entry to the book that way.
Yeah, that's true. And then do you use that as a way to like build a newsletter list or anything like that?
Absolutely. People come into my list. I don't necessarily like talking about the traditional, we've got a lead capture page and this and that, but
Mhm.
that's what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Then you put them onto your email list. But for me, I'm very much about human connection. If you look under the My Future Business logo, it's got helpful people helping people. So I thought, well, if that is my mission, how do I go about that? How do I use the book to help me achieve that outcome? So I started Podcasting Central, which is a Facebook group that I invite people onto. And there are lots of people out there that want to know how to do podcast marketing because there's a
Yeah.
difference between podcasting and podcast marketing.
Yeah.
There's the systems behind it that a lot of people that are starting out may not consider, may not know. So that's really, what I'm all about, getting them involved and having a two-way conversation.
That's wonderful. I really like that. And I love your kind of motto behind your My Future Business. That's cool.
Mm.
Have you found that writing this book has complemented your business then in other ways, or your podcast has complemented the sales of your book, or has there been some kind of cool relationship between those?
Yeah, it's a two-way street. I
Mm.
think the podcast has brought around attention and awareness of the book, as the book has brought attention and awareness of the podcast. So I think it's a bit of a handshake relationship. I look back now and I think it would have been very different had I not created this book, had I not written the book, because I just would have been that podcast guy. But now people get to see some insights because there are some stories inside the book that are personal, that are real life case studies of my own life, as well as the people that I've worked with. And, that it's complemented other people, which is probably more impressive to me, that it's actually making a difference in their lives. Because at the end of the day, Joe, I don't want to leave anything on the table. When my days are done, I want to know that I've done the best I can to help other people achieve their goals.
That's cool. Oh, I love that. That's so cool. So you are in the process of writing another book. Is that correct?
You would have thought, you'd think I'm a glutton for punishment. I would have thought, yeah, but I am. I certainly am. Yesterday, in fact, I spent a couple of hours and I was so impressed that I'd gotten a couple of hours down, and it just wasn't jumbled. It was restructuring, revisit, revise and revitalize. And I try to condense, and I've got currently something like 75,000 words, and it's for the most part a bit of a mess. But I'm starting to again use the Aaron Fletcher method structure, which is pretty much the framework, as he calls it. And that's all it is. There's nothing more to it. The content is certainly my own. It's the structure that I use. So following that structure is absolutely wonderful because it helps guide your creative process so that you're not just writing and going, where's the duplicity? Because duplicity is a killer. I've found is that I've written the same thing twice because it's a different day, and I come back and go, haven't I spoken about this before? So using that process, it helps you to avoid it. But yeah, it's in the same realm. I promised myself that I'd write 3 books related to podcasting, and I've done one. So I'm on to the second. I'm not sure about the third. We'll worry about that when we get to it.
So this time round, what are you finding different about it? Is there aspects of it that's easier or aspects of it that is differently challenging?
Yeah, I know I can do it now. I always look at the cover of my other book that's sitting near me on the table here, and I think, I've done this. I know I can do it again. I know the process. I know that there are systems in place that are going to help me market it if I need them. I am a marketer, trust in myself. But I think that confidence comes shining through, because if there's one thing that I will say that is a great benefit is the positive feedback that you get from people who have got a copy of the book and they say, look, this is wonderful. This is great. Because you need that validation, I think, because initially when you send it out, you're not sure. You think it's good, but the market tells you what's good by what they do with it. So yeah, that validation, verification that it is, useful to other people, has helped me this time around to go forward with confidence, I guess you'd say.
That's cool. Have you had different challenges then this time, or is it just all like in general, just easier?
My challenge that I've set for myself is to not take 2 years to do it. But by the same token, not compromise on the quality either. And I worry that I'm going to make a comparison between the quality of my first book, which took almost my life because I was so, I wouldn't say stressed, but I was focused on it so much so that it was playing on my mind.
Yeah.
Whereas this time, it comes back to that quality component that we were talking about earlier. I don't want to put out a second book and go, because I've made it, because I've already become a published author, I don't want to put in the effort this time. That's certainly not the case. It's got to be as good, if not better.
I find that so interesting. I've been talking to a lot of authors recently, debut authors, who are finding that is their biggest challenge with writing their second book, is that comparisonitis to themselves with their first book.
Yes.
And not wanting to disappoint their audience so I'm finding that really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, you have, it's unfortunately, but fortunately for me, I have a background in quality management. I spent, best part of 10 years as a quality manager. So it's a curse because you know what quality is, you know what quality control is, you you want to assure the same level of quality this time around with your work than you've always done in the past, but it's very difficult with a book. You don't know if it's going to hit the same heartstrings with people. Is it going to be as practical? Is it going to be as useful? What's the utility in it? All those things.
Yeah, I totally agree with you with that. And I think sometimes we get too close to our own words to see it through the lens that other people will see it through. So it is
Definitely.
tricky. Yeah. So with the completion of your second book, when it is completed, will you be looking at going the same route for publishing?
Absolutely. I found that this particular organization,
Mhm.
they're focused on not just I guess, the transaction. They're focused on building the relationships with the people that they're working with. And I'm a people person. So if you make me feel valued and you involve me in the process and you help me understand, you've got me. You've got me as a customer for life. I could have certainly done it all by myself, and they've got instructions on how you can use their systems to do it on your own. But where I need them, I will certainly be going down that path again.
Oh, that's awesome. That's cool. I'm glad you found that support
Yep.
to get you published. Like, yeah, it's
Oh,
fantastic.
it didn't happen overnight, but I did find them because, like I said, I found Scribe and I thought, no, there's this, that, and the other that I'm not really on board with. They're a great company. There's got lots of going for them, but I found another one that was just more suited for me at the time.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. That's cool. Now, the title of your book, your first book, Welcome to the Show 1.0, The Complete Podcasting System for Your Business. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Yep.
But for people listening to the show, can you just give a little bit more of an overview about what they'll find inside that book?
I certainly can. Welcome to the show is something that I say when I'm hosting the My Future Business show. It's an opening and it just stuck with me. I thought, welcome to the show. You're welcoming people to your podcast. So it's
Mhm.
kind of saying, well, there's a show behind this. And that show is actually a podcast. The one that I host is called the My Future Business show. And as mentioned earlier, Joe, it's structured around the Fletcher method. And what it does, it takes beginner um, or podcasters, and they are generally existing business owners, book authors, and those types of people who want to use podcasting in a way that gets results rather than it be just a conversation that's a bit of a side project for them. I've always wanted to run a business that was podcasting because when I left the corporate world, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew that I still wanted to be in business. And therefore I had to know what was it going to do to allow me to be a full-time father, which I have, and it's been the hardest job of my whole life, most rewarding at the same time. But through those years, I started to build a podcasting system that allowed me to maintain a lifestyle with my kids, be present for them, build a business specifically on podcasting, and in turn, in the background, helping clients get results with podcast marketing. So in this, there's 3 sections. In those 3 sections, it's planning, creation, delivery. So you plan your podcast, you actually create it, and then you deliver it. So you distribute it across networks. So it really goes from the A to Z of equipment. Some people think equipment's just equipment. I can buy any equipment. Well, it's not necessarily the case. There's a whole host of different things. We touched on this earlier about, not using Wi-Fi as opposed to using Wi-Fi. Little tricks and tips that I know after 10 years continuously podcasting day in, day out that other people do not even consider, let alone the fact that I've got longer amount of experience as a marketer, close to 20 years experience. I've combined those and created a system that allows you to encourage listeners by educating them. They learn more, they take an action to move one step closer to your business. Then they go on to become, as we talked about earlier, a lead or a prospect, if you want to call them that. Then ultimately, if you've done your job right, they become a buyer. So that's really the A to Z of it, very condensed version of it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And so I know that some of the audience of this podcast, they're primarily authors and writers or people interested in that. But I do have a few people listening to this who have their own podcasts and that as well. So who do you think should consider starting a podcast if they haven't already. So if we're looking at like primarily people in the realm of writing or journalism or authors or poets or whatnot, who do you think everybody should have a podcast, or what criteria do you think?
I think if you want to do a podcast and you have something to say and you're interested in getting your message out there, regardless of what it is that your background is, your niche, if you want to call it that, do it, give it a go. But in terms of the system that I use and I promote, it's more about getting a outcome. It's something that people would want to do inside of their business. It's something that people can certainly use to promote their books as well. But by and large, my main audience is small to medium-sized business owners. But again, saying that, everybody has something to say. If you have a story to tell, tell it. And I think podcasting is a medium that is not going away. It's gone very much past that I'm a fad stage. RSS feeds, I think they're a godsend. You can record something in one location, then using RSS, it goes out to the world in all of the locations where your best audience exists. What a wonderful time we live in to be able to do that. So if you got a story, you got something to say, do it.
It's awesome. I love it. One of the best things I did, completely stepping out of my comfort zone, was starting this podcast.
Yep.
And for me, this is a passion project at the moment. It's without, I'm not looking at monetization or anything right now for it. This is just me following my passion, and I get to chat with cool people and share these conversations with the world. And that is so fun for me.
That's
I
cool.
love it. Yeah. So,
hey, did you ever suffer nerves at the start?
Oh, still do at times.
Oh,
but
me too. Me too.
No, hugely. I am the world's biggest introvert, and I'd had the idea of having a podcast for about a year or so without knowing what I would do a podcast on, or, having any specifics. And I signed up, I did a course, and the course was very encouraging to just get out there, be messy just to begin.
Just do it.
And looking back, I don't know how I had the courage to do it, because quite frankly, I was nervous about how my voice would sound, and a lot of my guests are from overseas, and New Zealand accent people either like it or they don't. So it was completely out of my comfort zone, and I still don't quite know how I got here. But
congratulations. I've been listening to your show. It's wonderful.
Well, I appreciate it. I can't imagine not doing it now.
No, in fact, it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a little bit addictive. And if there were more hours in the day or the week or everything, or I wasn't working full time as well, this would be something I'd do on a much more regular basis than just fortnightly for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then how can people connect with you and find you and find your book and everything as well?
I think the easiest and most effective way is to go to myfuturebusiness.com. That's one word, myfuturebusiness.com. And even if you just typed in the individual words, My Future Business, on the internet, or my name, I'm pretty sure I'll pop up somewhere. So Rick Nuske's my name. Podcasting's my game.
Fantastic. Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much, Rick, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
The pleasure's all mine. Thank you very much for having me.
So here are some takeaways from today's show. 1. If fear is holding you back from writing your nonfiction book and you don't know where to start, research different processes, such as the Fletcher method, to give you a system to organize your knowledge into a book. 2. The way through self-doubt and negative self-talk is sometimes just to do that thing anyway. 3. Pay attention to the things that trigger your self-doubt and negative self-talk, and find activities to move through or disengage from that chatter. 4. To stand out in an often oversaturated digital arena like self-publishing, ensure you're still creating a high-quality product. 5. Reviews are a great way of creating credibility for your products. 6. Consider forging relationships with your readers by giving away your book for free. And 7. Endeavor to link your marketing, process back to your mission, motto, or your why. So again, if you are interested in learning more about podcasting or podcast marketing, make sure that you go check out the links in today's show notes to connect with Rick. And before I leave off, I also wanted to let you know that the doors to Carissa Andrews' 12-week Millionaire Author Manifestation course are now open. I have talked about this course on the last couple of episodes, and there is also an episode a little way back where I talked with both Carissa Andrews and Tammy Tyree, who host this amazing immersive experience. This course starts at the end of February. So if you are serious about using mindset, manifestation, and hypnosis to up your author game and truly create for yourself the author career and life of your dreams, and you want to connect with an awesome group of like-minded individuals, then make sure you go sign up today. So I'm an alumni and an affiliate for the course because I love it that much. So I would love if you could sign up via the link in my show notes. This just ensures that at no extra cost to you, I get a small kickback that actually helps support this show. So I greatly appreciate it. And because you're an Alchemy for Authors listener, if you do sign up, make sure you do use the promo code Alchemy at the checkout. ALCHEMY. That way, you'll be able to get 30% off the cost if you pay in full, or 30% off your first payment if you choose the payment plan. It's a really good deal, and honestly, if manifestation or the law of attraction is your thing and you're just not yet seeing the results that you desire in your author career, I highly recommend just go check it out. And finally, if you have enjoyed this show, please consider supporting it. Putting this podcast together, although it is my passion project, it is a labor of love, it also requires a lot of time and money on my part. Supporting it, though, requires as little as just rating or reviewing or sharing it with a friend, or even just tagging me on Instagram with a photo of you listening and enjoying it. That all means the world to me and helps support this show. If you prefer, you can also make a donation through Buy Me a Coffee. That is just at buymeacoffee.com/Jo Buer, and that is also gratefully received too. Next week, I will hopefully be back with another mini-sode, so I'm hoping that you're enjoying these little in-betweeny mini-sodes. So I'll hopefully have that to share with you. And then after that, we're back to another full episode, and this is one that I'm so excited to share with you because I will be chatting with the wonderful Orna Ross all about her Go Creative planning system. And if you don't know who Orna Ross is, go Google her. She is amazing. But until then, my friend, happy writing.